Hello dear World of Warcraft friends, welcome back to a new video on my channel. Today with a topic that I find very interesting. It's about disconnects. Now you might be asking yourself, what's so interesting about that? You get kicked out of the game, you go offline, and so on. Yeah, that's true so far. But a new system might be getting tested, where Blizzard is apparently working on making characters keep moving after they disconnect. And so a disconnect doesn't necessarily mean your immediate death. What this all looks like, where these speculations come from, and so on, we'll take a look at all that in this video. And with that, I'd say let's get started right away. If you like, leave a like, subscribe, let's hit 38,000. Especially now during the summer slump, that would be a huge help. Of course, it doesn't cost you anything, and you'll always stay up to date here. And with that, let's get started. And yes, all in all, you can imagine the whole thing a bit like, for example, with the follower dungeons. Sounds strange, but that's how it is. This is how it works right now. If you disconnect, of course, you'll have a brief freeze frame. Then your character will be kicked out of the game. And then that's it. You have to log in again. And in most cases, or very often, you end up dead because I don't know, your character just stands there like that. Other mobs cast spells, blow you away. Too bad. And that seems to be changing now because several players have reported it. That, for example, normally if a teammate disconnects, that player immediately stops moving. Or at most, they might just run in place for a bit. But usually these characters get kicked out. And that's it. This also became known here, among other things, through this pirate nation, who is actually known for having very good insider information about the video game industry and its developments in the past. And that very account suspects players have noticed since the patch, hey, someone in my group got disconnected, but their character is still moving. So in the end here, like these AI dudes, the teammate got disconnected, but the characters were still happily and actively running around even though the player was actually no longer in the game. And now this account suspects that it has something to do with Blizzard testing a new technology. The idea behind this technology is that disconnects shouldn't be so punishing in the future. And that would mean the moment you get disconnected from the game, your character will be taken over by these or by the AI that otherwise controls the spirits here, the ones that are in the follower dungeons. Whether that's actually true in the end or not, that's of course, a big question mark, let's put it that way. So in the end, no one will really be able to answer that unless Blizzard releases it at some point. But I actually find the basic theory behind it quite interesting. If you take a look, at first I would have thought, yeah, no, that's, I don't know, super unrealistic. How is that supposed to work? But if you think about it a little, I know. For example, in the Formula One games, it's like this. If you get disconnected or kicked out of the game or whatever, and you are in an online race, does your character or your car get taken over by the AI and then it keeps driving in your place? The problem with this is this AI isn't particularly fast. So, if you are expecting that, for example, you are in first place and then get kicked out, and then you're still in first place afterwards, that's very unlikely. So, that's not going to happen like that. but it makes sure that you don't, I don't know, just crash into the next wall. It makes sure that you're still in the race and can continue your race a little behind. And that's how I could imagine it in World of Warcraft, you know? Call it. The technology exists in other games. So why not here as well? You get disconnected. At that moment, the AI intervenes, controls your character, and in the end, it doesn't even necessarily have to do any healing or damage or anything else. It's really mainly about it at least moving around in a basic way. I'll say if that happens during a mythic boss fight where the player who disconnected is involved in a mechanic where, for example, he has to go to a marker and do something with another player, and AI won't be able to handle that, right? But in that case, you can just make a call on the fly for someone else to step in. For example, the next person in line would then play that part with the other player. And the AI just makes sure that this player moves somewhat realistically and simply doesn't die. So, or at least dodges the ground effects, whatever. So, not using defensive cooldowns or anything like that, but just trying to dodge the things that are on the ground. I think that would already help a lot. And in the end, that would make sure that disconnects depending on who it affects. And if this player has died in the past, for example, I also know this from our previous Mythic Progress. If a player disconnected and then died, we could have kept going on the boss. But in a difficult fight, losing your battle res within the first minute or so because someone disconnected, those are the kinds of fights you usually don't want to continue. And that's why people often say, yeah, whatever, let's just call it, right? Fuck it. Um, that's one example of where this kind of protection and mechanic could help in the future. Simply so that the groups are better equipped. That's why, honestly, I think the idea behind it is pretty cool. Let's see if there's anything to it, if something like that will happen or not. I think, if anything, it's probably going to take quite a while. And if it does happen, there'll probably be internal tests first. But let's just wait and see. Feel free to write in the comments what you think about it. And yes, with that, thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Have a wonderful time and take care.